I'm Jamie Seeker, and this is What It Takes. Each episode, I sit down with real business owners to talk about their journey, the wins, the challenges, and everything in between. Let's dive in. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to What It Takes. I'm so excited about today's guest. She is a true trailblazer in the beverage world. Rhonda Kallman is not only the co-founder of the Boston Beer Company, but she's also the powerhouse behind Boston Harbor Distillery. Rhonda has spent nearly 4 decades shaking up the alcohol beverage industry, breaking barriers as one of the first women in a male-dominated field and creating some of the most innovative craft beers and spirits out there. So today we're diving into her incredible journey, how she built 2 game-changing companies, the challenges she faced along the way, and what it takes to break barrels and barriers. So let's get into it.
Hi,
Hey,
Jamie.
Rhonda, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being on. Like I said, when we first started getting on, I'm so excited to have you. And I just want to start from the very beginning. What inspired you to enter the alcohol beverage industry in the late 80s? And how, or I would say, as my
Early
friends say,
80s.
oh yes, in the early, as my kids would say, in the late 1900s. That's what I had in my head. Early 80s for us that are lived in the 1900s. How did the Boston Beer Company come to life?
Well, I just have to. So, Jim Cook is, you can't tell the story about Boston Beer without Jim. And I met him in 1980. He was a management consultant at Boston Consulting Group, BCG, one of the thought leaders of the world. And I was a secretary and moonlighting as a bartender and a waitress. I just worked in bars and restaurants since I was 15 years old and love it. And so he decided he's the 6th consecutive oldest son to be a brewer. And his family, he has 3 Harvard degrees, really bright guy. He knew about beer and he knew about business, but he didn't know anything about bars. So there I was. And he asked me to help him start a beer company in like 1983. And I said, geez, Jim, I don't drink beer, I drink whiskey. And ever since I was a little girl, my grandparents were from Eastern Europe. They drank whiskey. My father drank whiskey. And if you wanted to steal your father's booze, you would drink a whiskey. So I just fell in love with it. And, ironically, the process for beer starts off as the process for whiskey starts off as beer. So I've kind of come full circle. But Jim said, look, I'll make something that you like. And of course he did. And together we started the Boston Beer Company and in 1984, so 40 years ago.
Oh, that's amazing. So, what are some of those unique challenges that you face specifically as a woman in this industry?
Well, too numerous to count. People ask me all the time, "What's it like being a woman in a man's world?" And my response is usually, "I don't know what it's like being a man," but I do know that it's exciting. There's the boys' club. There's still the boys' club. And probably in my lifetime, there will always be that club. And when I say that, half the world's population are women, but we're relegated to minority status for some reason, which is very infuriating. And then we share that minority status with all the other, immigrants and all kinds of different people. It's very difficult for any of us to really get ahead out and break outside of that, half minority thing. But that said, I found it. I'm from Boston, and we're hard drinking, hard charging. We're just kind of thick-skinned people, and it didn't really faze me being in bars all hours of the days and nights, and having drunk people doing weird things, and it didn't bother me, because I was very comfortable with myself and what I was doing, and I always had that beer, that product to talk about. And what I really fell in love with was the education of it all and what makes, this special beer different or my special whiskey different. And, what you'll find as we talk, I always come back to ingredients because I just fell in love with it. I don't know why. So I'm in a way an educator of all things craft alcohol. And that's my passion.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, how did you gain respect and that credibility when it came to this space where women were kind of underrepresented?
Well, it was interesting because, nobody was hiring women. So there was this wonderful talent pool available because nobody was hiring them. And I find, in this industry, particularly going to market with products, you walk into a bar or restaurant or a package store and you quickly have to size up what's going on, what's on draft, what's on the menu, what's on the back bar, blah, 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 all these different things. And I find women are perfectly suited for that because of the hair and the makeup, the outfit, all the stuff we do every day. And so it was really natural for women to be part of this. And that's really what I'm most proud of, is like building a team. When I left Boston Beer after 15 years, there was over 55% of the sales organization were females. So that was cool. But it was, being a girl in the boys club was always hard. I don't play golf. Like I really, what I had in common with these guys, mostly my customers, the distributors, the retailers, etc., was the beer itself. And let's talk about making some money. And I made a lot of people a lot of money. So they started to listen to me, and then I really, hit on different sensibilities. Like, I had these beer distributors who were in their 70s, and I would find out about their wives and their kids and all of the stuff that guys don't really talk about. And so I ingratiated myself with them, and mostly every one of my customers I've ever had, I would call them a friend as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. And you talked a little bit about your departure. So let's talk a little bit about that transition. What led you to found Boston Harbor Distillery? How does it reflect your personal and professional growth in that time in the brewing side?
Oh my gosh. It's been an amazing ride. It's hard to get an encore after Boston Beer Company. We grew it from nothing, the two of us, to what became at one point $11 billion market cap. Of course, I didn't really benefit in any of that upside, but that's my own fault. That said, I left Boston Beer after 15 years. We went public and things started to change, and I really wasn't as excited about getting up every day. I mean, the direction they've taken, you can see like truly angry or different things outside of that really crafty realm. And so I decided to leave. There was one article that said, the queen of beer stepped off her throne. And I really didn't know what I was going to do next. But then I got a call from Jim's brewing consultant, who I had known now for, 15 years. His name was Dr. Joseph Oades. He was credited with the invention of light beer in 1967. So really genius. He was the world's yeast expert. And he called me up and he said, "I'll make a beer, you start a company." And he was 80 years old at the time. And I couldn't fathom, like, how could I be in beer and not be with Sam Adams? But I happened to be in the Caribbean. And here was the man who invented light beer. And I called him back and I said, "Joe, you're on. If you can figure out how to make a better light beer, it's been 35, 40 years since you've done that." And we did. And I called it Edison after that invention, in innovation in light. It was a beer made from scratch to be light. It wasn't a watered down version of anything else. And I named the company New Century Brewing Company because it was the first brewing company of the new millennium. And so it's really exciting. And I raised some little bit of money that I had never done that before. Jim had really done all that for Boston Beer, and, put it all together and launched my new beer company at the National Beer Wholesalers Association in Las Vegas. And I had a great day, barely went to sleep because it's Vegas, and woke up and the world had changed. It was 9/11. And so from that moment forward, it was kind of been like this weird doom loop that I've had. I kept things going. I launched in New York and Boston, and those were not great places to be launching back then. And, I had investors that were going to sign up for more money, and they ended up not doing it. I mean, everything had changed back then, but I kept the business going. And I ended up looking around to see what other people were drinking. And it happened to be a very caffeinated story. It was Starbucks, it was Red Bull, and even Mountain Dew was, really on fire. So I call Oades, now he's like 83 or something. And I said, "Joe, can you make me a beer with caffeine?" And he hung up on me. And I called him back and I took him through the business reasons. There's over $100 billion worth of beer consumed annually in this country. And if you're a beer lover and you want to pick me up, you have to leave beer and go to like god awful Red Bull and vodka or Jack and Coke or a coffee drink. So he called me back 2 days later. He said, we can do it. So we ended up with a patent in 4 countries in the process of adding caffeine to beer and ale. And I launched on a credit card because I had no money. I launched a beer called Moonshot, and it had 69 milligrams of caffeine in it the year the astronauts landed on the moon. Like a cup of Folgers is about 80, just to give you an order of magnitude. And it was amazing. And unfortunately, Dr. Wade's was sick and he was elderly and I needed a brewing consultant. So he sent me to somebody else who happened to be the consultant behind Four Loko. And they ended up he ended up using my patented process with Four Loko of adding caffeine to beer and ale, even though theirs was Speedball in a can and mine was in a brown bottle beer. They ended up getting us all shut down. It's the only thing since Prohibition to be banned by the federal government in 2011. So I spent 10 long, lonely years at the forefront, of having a better light beer for craft beer drinkers and having this caffeinated beer that was awesome to getting shut down by the federal government.
Wow.
And I say, when life hands you lemons, I ended up making whiskey. And I recognized just that Jim had 30 years before that white space for good quality. For him, it was beer. For me, it was whiskey in my beloved city of Boston. And so I started Boston Harbor Distillery.
Wow, what a journey that is. What a journey. And it's crazy to me that got, of all the things to get shut down and everything that's on the market now with energy drinks and just some of these things, I just cringe when I look at even my kids grab them for them and I'm like, no, like we're not going to do that. And I have one of my adult children who is out and is like, I'm done with coffee. I'm strictly energy drinks now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like these things, I can't believe that they're just allowed to be out there. So I can understand of all the things for that.
I mean,
I know really what's getting shut down.
and it was all natural. It was little personal thing. I had cancer at the time and it made me feel good. And I had 3 children of my own. I mean, I'm not going to put anything on the market that's, going to harm people. Clearly, everything deserves moderation.
Absolutely.
But, they should have, instead of banning, Jamie, they should have done what the FDA does, which is regulate. And it should have been percentage of alcohol to caffeine and not go below that, not go above that. And because mine was a 5% alcohol beer by volume with 69 milligrams, theirs was 12% in a can, plus red dye and sugar and 250 plus milligrams of caffeine. So,
Yeah.
and I'll just end with this because it's a little sour grapes, but at the time there was a study being done by Boston University of all places on the effects of caffeine and alcohol. And I found out about it, called the professor who was running this study, and he wouldn't talk to me about it because he was in the middle of the study and they're very protective of their work. But like a year and a half after we shut down, I got an email from him and he basically said, you were wronged because the study showed trace amounts of caffeine is a positive. It's not a negative. Like, that's why people like you need so rough, they're drinking coffee, just because you need a little kick. And so there's that. But you're right. Cannabis it's legal here in Massachusetts and you can get it delivered to your door, but it's not even federally legal. But I can't ship a bottle of whiskey or to anybody in the state. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, so you founded Boston Harbor Distillery, and now that's the space that you're in now. So looking back on your career, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned about leadership, perseverance? Because it seems like you were able to pivot at every turn. You just kept going and kept going. So that's like when I hear you speaking, I can hear perseverance because a lot of people, if they face even half of the things that you did that you mentioned just in this last section of I'm done. I'm gonna throw in the towel. I'm gonna give it up. But you just kept, rolling with the punches and kept going on. So what would you say are what kept you going in that time?
Well, it's a good thing I'm a good dancer because I've been dancing a lot. Like, and the pandemic for me was just another major event that was enormous, and it's what else are you going to do? My friends and my family, they see me. I've been struggling, I mean, clearly, I've just been struggling personally, professionally. It's life, life is hard. That's it. So I'm getting the most out of it for sure. And I always, they're saying, well, how long are you going to do this insanity? And I'm going to do it as long as I still have options. And I mean, this is my distillery. This is the inside of it. I love coming here every day. It gives me joy. And importantly, it gives my customers joy. Anybody who walks through these doors can't believe that they walked into this hidden gem. And that's what we do, right? So this is my center for education. So I want people to know about what goes in the bottle because that's the most important thing, particularly with alcohol. I mean, the fact that we don't have nutritional information on the labels is bizarre to me, but we don't. And maybe that'll change. I hope it will. And maybe I can help that change happen because particularly with alcohol, people need to know what they're ingesting and putting in their bodies because if used wrongly, it will hurt you. And I think that's the job of the federal government to give us the information that we need to make decisions for ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You have done certainly so much over the years, and I think just even talking about some of that, um, the conflict or obstacles, we didn't even hit the pandemic until, the end of this podcast, and most people start with that, like, that's their big, you know obstacle that they've faced. So it's really cool to hear how you can continue to move forward. And really the thing that you can expect with 100% is that you will face adversity. You will face these obstacles. And it's just a matter of like, what are you going to do to dance through it? What are you going to do to roll with those punches and keep going? So what's next for you in your future in Boston Distillery or other ventures that you might have in mind?
Well, there's always stuff on the horizon, and then the blurring of the lines has clearly started in our industry between beer and the fourth space and cannabis and psilocybin. Like, who knows what the hell's going to happen? But for me, Boston Harbor Distillery is my future. It's my present. It's been my past for the last decade. And it takes a long time to build something from nothing with being undercapitalized, not having a partner. I mean, Jim Cook was lucky when we started Boston Beer Company. He had me and I had him. But we don't have, I don't have that type of partnership now. And it's been a lot because I'm building a legacy company for Boston that will make Bostonians and those people that come through this great little city that we have to be prideful of what we're manufacturing and producing in a major metropolitan city. That's what I mean, that's taking everything I've got and I'm committed to it.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. I absolutely love that city, and my friends that are from Boston, they have this same characteristics that you highlighted, and I absolutely love that about them. I love being around them. It's a lot of fun. So I would say that brings us to our signature question. This podcast is called What It Takes, and I want to tailor it specifically toward empowering women. What advice would you give to women aspiring to lead in traditionally male dominated industries? What would you say to them about what it takes to do what you've done?
You have to first believe in yourself and your abilities. And I can't stress that enough because your loved ones, especially, whether they're your husband or your partner or your parents or your aunt, people don't want to see you struggle or suffer or not get ahead or not get the things that you want. And it's really hurtful to them. But we just have to believe in ourselves and take care of ourselves because frankly, nobody else will. And and understand that entrepreneurship or building something that you're really, truly passionate about is a huge sacrifice in so many ways. You know, I have 3 children. They're in their 20s now, but they will tell you, mom wasn't around that much. But that's, and the other parents were. And a little bit of resentment there. But now that they're older, I tell them, look, I've got to have just because I gave life to you doesn't mean I can't have my own life. But I knew your teachers and your soccer coaches, and they don't realize what it is that we as women do behind the scenes. We can have it all. It may not be perfect, but who's striving for perfection these days? We are striving to be happy and to be fulfilled. And for me, I've been using the words joy a lot. Maybe it's the Christmas season, who knows? But I want joy. I want to spend my time with things and people that give me joy. And you really ought to think that through. You're probably not, you may or may not make millions of dollars. If that's the goal, that's a whole different path. But you got to first do something that you love and that you're passionate about. And that's different. There's got to be a point of difference. It has to be some unique selling proposition because there's too much on the market today. So I'm happy to talk to anybody who's trying to start something, because you really do have to do some soul searching before you do it. Because for me, it has been hard. The pandemic, oh my God, brought us all craft producers to our knees, and we're still there. It's really, really a difficult environment, and it's hard. But there's always going to be adversity, and you're going to have to, it's been 12 years. There's no turning back for me. So be careful what you wish for.
Absolutely. Well, you heard it right here, you guys. What it takes. Be careful what you wish for, but you really can have it all. I totally agree with that as well. I would say that early on is, trying to pigeonhole into one thing or another. It's like, no, I really think we can do it all. And I think that's kind of how we think as women. When you look into those studies of your brain, men very much are compartmentalized, and we're doing one thing at a time, and they're really focused on one thing, and then they can switch to another. But women, it's all connected, and we see it like, yeah, well, we can just do it all at the same time and have it all. I want to have a family and a career and do something that's meaningful. So I definitely, I agree with you. I think that's wonderful advice. And I'm so excited that you came on the show today. What an amazing conversation. Rhonda, thank you so much. I hope you're feeling as inspired as I am by her story, her resilience, and her passion for making her mark in a tough, tough industry. So if you're in Boston or planning a visit, make sure to check out Boston Distillery and experience the history, the innovation, the incredible craft spirits that Rhonda and her team have created. Rhonda, where else can they find you if they're looking for you?
Well, you guys, we're really in New England, upstate New York. We got a little thing going, distribution in Southern California, because you got to be in California. But BostonHarborDistillery.com is our website. We cannot ship from Massachusetts, but we have other people that can ship on our behalf. Come through. And also, if you're traveling through Logan Airport, we do have a concept there at the new Terminal E at Logan Airport. So stop in, have a little taste of Boston before your next flight.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for tuning into this episode of What It Takes. Don't forget to subscribe, share this episode with your friends, and leave us a review. It really, really helps. So until next time, keep chasing your dreams and doing what it takes to make them happen. We'll see you soon. Would you or someone you know like to be featured on this podcast? Our applications are now open. Apply today at seekersolution.com and click on the podcast link to get started.